let's run some quick numbers. How many queries are you receiving a week, a month, whatever you want to say, versus how many are you requesting at least a partial on? Because you get the first 10 pages up front, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how often do you request a partial? And then a year, how many new clients are you taking on?
Okay, so I have been acquiring clients and open to queries since 2018. Also I want to give a real shout out to writers at this time, because writers are writing and they are querying, and I am amazed by it. I would say I think right now I have about 400, between 400 to 500 queries, and that's all from like June, like the beginning of June to now. I am amazed.
Quarantine is a perfect time to finally sit down and get those words on the page.
I wish that was true for me.
Yeah, no, I'm having absolute issues with that, but I'm so glad that other people aren't.
Yes. Actually, a lot of I've had a lot of offers of requests come in from writers who are getting requests from other agents too. So there are also a lot of agents working very quickly at this time. This is all to say, caveat, it's not me. I am working at a much slower pace than other of my colleagues, which I am happy for them. But that's just something that if you want to know, it's just out there. That's for you to deal with. But it's actually interesting that I have 5 clients now. One second, sorry. I have 5 clients now, and 4 of them I got through pitch contests. So it would be, one was from Pitch Wars in 2017, and then one was a DV Pit request, which is a Twitter pitch contest, and then one was a Pit Mad request, which is also a Twitter pitch contest, and then I think another one was also a DV Pit, and I first requested it within 2018, and I think she did a R&R, and she submitted again in 2019. And then I have my adult; those are all YA clients, and then I have an adult romance client who queried me last year. So I have actually only signed 1 client from queries so far, but that does not mean I haven't requested from queries or offered. So I would say I'm not great with numbers, but if, let's say I get 200 queries, I might be requesting 1 or 2 out of them, and then out of 10 requests, I might be offering on 1. This is solely because I am trying to be very intentional with the projects that I sign. I have loved or like really liked many requests that I've had, but maybe it's like this is not speaking to me on like a humanist level. Like I've mentioned several times that I really want to talk about stories that really get at the heart of human connection and how we interact with each other in the world. And maybe at this point, like, and maybe at that time, like this maybe just wasn't hitting it for me there. Or right now I'm really looking for, I'm so sorry, did I just burp and can you hear that?
I mean, I think you would have gotten away with it, but now for sure everybody knows that it happened.
Sorry. Or like right now, I've been leaning away from kind of high fantasy narratives because I really I love world building. I love the details of how worlds work and magic systems, if it has magic and stuff like that. But really, right now, I really want intimate, immersive, emotionally, like emotional inner life. And kind of voicey stuff that's like on the page. So it's just I'm being so particular about the kind of the projects that I sign. But sorry, going back to the original question, I request fulls if I want to see the project, because I just can't stand getting to like page 50 and I'm like, I want to read more, and then having to ask for it. And then I also think at a certain point it's a little bit unfair, because say that you have a full manuscript, you're going to stop reading when you stop reading anyway. So it's kind of, and then I think requesting a partial and then requesting a full can put a lot of stress on the writer, because then it's like a lot more anxiety of like, will they request the full now that they have the partial, that type of thing. So I don't know. I'm trying
we're
to
at
be
a
more
nice
mindful of that.
restaurant. One of us is down on one knee. What's going to happen here?
What's going to happen? We haven't got our breadstick refill. Kind of want to deal with that first before we answer this question.
Do you want to start the rest of our lives without breadsticks? My God.
I'm like, I can't. I couldn't live with myself, honestly. And then when I look at queries, I think query letters are really important, but I also understand how hard they are. I still can't write them myself. I do give query consultations though, and I found that I'm really helpful with giving notes. But I like to read the pages first, and then if I'm interested in what I'm reading, go back to the query to get a better visualization of what the story is. Because I just feel like it's more fair, because at the end of the day, it's always about the writing, right? And maybe a writer might not know what to pitch a story as. So like say I have a client who wrote a book about it's like a witch book, and she's infiltrating this human kingdom, and that's like the pitch. But you can also pitch that as a story of sisterhood. So, and you could pitch your story, your book, by the way, writers, any way you want, really. It's, and I think sometimes it's like hard to just, in a querying stage, depending on like where you at in your writing career and your writing journey, to know, okay, what is the pitch that I want to pitch my story as? And then how do I do that when there's like these other plots or these other things that I'm talking about that are just as interesting to me. So like, what's the focus? And sometimes I think it's a lot to ask. So I give a lot of forgiveness on the query letter. All that to say, I am a stickler for whether queryers follow guidelines. I am a super paranoid person. I was not really cognizant in Y2K. I was like 9. But it really got into my brain. So I see attachments on emails and I delete them. I'm not opening it up. I'm afraid. I'm afraid.
I'm just realizing I sent you an attachment earlier. I apologize.
But we had already corresponded at that point. And I asked about you from Holly Root. I was like, Rob, do you know Rob? She's like, Rob's fantastic. He's great. I was like, okay, see.
Oh,
but
well,
I
thank you,
can
Holly
check
Root.
that out.
Back at you. I appreciate it.
Can't really do that with a lot of queryers. And as someone who grew up watching The Matrix and conspiracy theories in Lifetime, I just I'm a very cautious person. So I would always say, read agents in my agency submission guidelines, and then if an agent has specific ones, read those. I mean, of course, it's always fair to reach out and ask questions. Hopefully the agent will answer or see it and answer. I don't think it's always they're ignoring you, but it's just read that and read it again, because you'll be surprised how many just blatantly. I've gotten so many queries that are like, I have researched how to write a query and I don't like it, so I'm just gonna throw this at you instead.
Really, more than once that
more than
gem
once
has shown up in your inbox.
The confidence amazes me. I'm like, teach me your ways.
It's like I was always amazed back in my single days, which God knows the whole world has changed since then, because it's been so long ago. But if I were at a bar and very, very happily married. When 16, 17 years ago, when I was in a situation at a singles bar, and I would see somebody approach someone of either sex and lead with, why are all members of whatever sex that person is terrible? Who is that opening line going to ever work on?
Astounding. It's astounding to me.
That's what I think of when I hear stories like this. Why are all literary agents are terrible? But I'm hoping you will be the one brilliant enough to recognize me.
Even if that flattered me as an individual, I work with literary agents, so you're insulting my colleagues. But I understand that querying is such a very frustrating process, and there's always going to be more writers and agents. So I definitely understand, where it can be really emotionally draining and exhausting, but you can just kind of send that stuff to your friends and then just save the cordialness for us.
Post it anonymously on a board. Come on, man.
Yes, Reddit is there.
So do you read the query first, or you just dive into the 10 pages to see if the query is even worth your time?
Yeah, so I read the pages first, and then I go back to the query if I'm interested. And then I'm trying this thing now, which does take longer, where I try to give a line or two on like why something isn't working for me, which is kind of really hard because it's just like trying to figure out what comment or critique will be most valuable to the writer in the most broad sense, rather than just me in particular. But sometimes it really is something like, you know, a story is not for me, and it's not the writing, it's not the story. It's just, I mean, like, I don't want to read about robot chickens right now. That's, if it opens, that's not a query that I got. But
today was the day our heroine would bravely save the world after she came out from fighting with homophobia. That you don't need to read paragraph 2. That's
and then sometimes I do that. And I mean, I think it's just always kind of, I really try to keep in mind that every story that writers write is really personal to them. It's really, you're the only one working on your book, right? For such a long time. So you grow really close to it. So I try to be as sympathetic to that as possible, and trying out this thing. But it's just kind of really hard to parse out critiques sometimes. That's a wholly different thing. But it's just because sometimes it's like, do I really want to throw 6 sentences of this thing, or can I say something that's a little bit more easier? But that's just my brain. I don't know if that's interesting to anybody.
No, I think that'd be absolutely fascinating. Anyone hoping to query that? I heard your thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. I have a PS4. I need you to be my agent right away. How about typos within those first 10 pages? Do you have allowance for that? The story's good enough that, okay, yeah, there's 12 typos in 10 pages. Come on, champ, get a little bit more professional. But does that prevent you from requesting a full, or is that a deal breaker?
Honestly, I've never counted typos in a query. However, I think if there are, I think our brains, there are typos that we can slide over them so we don't even really notice them. But I guess there is like a certain threshold where if there's enough, it's like, oh, this is, so I can't give a number to it, but I would say make it as clean as possible. I mean, I send emails all the time with typos. So I really try to be more forgiving on that. But when it comes to the page, like, so in a query, but when it comes to the pages themselves, the hope is that you've kind of been through this with a fine-tooth comb. So I would say, as long as there's not excessive typos within like a successive number, is that the right word? A successive number of lines.
Sounds good. Checks out.
Yeah.
Grammatically correct, forget.
Yeah, I'm not a copy editor.
I'm always horrified if I send an email with a typo because, of course, at the bottom of every email is my shameless plug. I am a writer. Here's my books. Here's my website. As you can see from this flawless email, look forward to the incredible quality that awaits you.
Oh my gosh, my browser was auto-correcting my name. So I go by Kiki on Twitter, and in a lot of professional literary settings, I'll like submit my name as Kiki. So it's like if you call me that, Rob, or you, audience, that's not a terrible thing. I've been trying really hard to establish that.
So anybody who listens, they don't have to be me having had this intimate conversation. They can just be a bystander, and they can go with Kiki.
Yes, exactly. But my browser was autocorrecting Kiki to Loki for a long time. And sometimes I wouldn't catch it. So
why would you want to? That's perfect.
So for that reason, I've even been forgiving to queryers who've misspelled my name, even though my name is like, you know, on my agency website and everywhere. I am a little bit more forgiving on that, unless it's like really like, you know, you use an E instead of an I. Kiana is how you spell my name. But even then, I try to be a little bit more forgiving, even though but that's just me personally. Don't do that with other people. And, you know, Also, make sure that you are copy and pasting correctly, because sometimes I'll get like, "Dear Andrew." I'm like, I'm not Andrew. That really hurt my feelings.
Dear Holly Root, you're the best
Yes.
literary agent around.
I tell her all the time.
Well, no, I assume somebody would send that to you. That's off to a bad start right away.